Hey everybody, Home/Center here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing an incredible tournament run at the most recent Pokemon Go Championship Series tournament that was held this past weekend in Atlanta, Georgia. Over 220 trainers registered for the tournament, and when the dust settled, a unique double ice team built around Shadow Lapras and Alolan Ninetales surprised many trainers and climbed high enough to earn a medal in the tournament. Now this team was built by a trainer who goes by the in-game name Tomahawk UK, who actually traveled from England to compete. Now the team is as follows. There's the old meta staple core of Azumarill plus Shadow Drapion, and then 4 updated Pokemon. Claydol, Shadow Lapras, Alolan Ninetales running Powder Snow, Dazzling Gleam, and Weather Ball Ice, and Shadow Sableye that opted for Power Gem instead of a second Dazzling Gleam user. His first streamed match of the day was against Adib Khan, who was running a pretty interesting team. Chestnut, Furret, Talonflame, Claydol, Alolan Sandslash, and Azumarill. The leads are set for game number 1, and honestly the lead is not a favorable one for Tomahawk, leading a Shadow Drapion into Alolan Sandslash. While Shadow Claw from the Sandslash is going to be resisted, Drill Run will inflict massive super effective damage. Crunch into the Sandslash is no shielded. We see a defense drop, a save switch into Shadow Lapras, and then it will swiftly be answered with Chestnut. Chestnut able to hit for super effective damage with both Vine Whip and Frenzy Plant, but Lapras, thanks to Psywave, can hit back hard. And these Psywaves are absolutely melting the Chestnut. Lapras is going to farm up to the back-to-back Sparkling Arias. Sparkling Aria is, of course, going to be resisted damage, but due to the insane damage from these Psywaves, this is almost a range where Sparkling Aria can knock out. Adib is going to no-shield, Sparkling Aria is going to connect, Chestnut able to hang on with fractional HP remaining, and fire off a superpower. Tomahawk elects to not give up the final shield, down goes Lapras, and now things will get a little bit uncomfortable here as the Shadow Sableye is going to be answered with Furret after it hits the field. Furret double resist Shadow Claw, so things are not looking good for Tomahawk in game number 1. Tomahawk is going to stay in this matchup and connect with a Foul Play. This will do solid damage to the Furret. Foul Play is going to connect. There's the switch into Drapion and catches the Trailblaze. Trailblaze would have been neutral damage on the Sableye. It's going to be resisted on the Drapion. There's the counter switch into the Alolan Sandslash. Alolan Sandslash now going to fire off the super effective Drill Run. Drill Run is no shielded, down goes the Drapion, but this was just a ploy to bait back out the Sandslash, and now Shadow Sableye can close out this game. Sableye is going to be shielding up this Ice Punch, looking to commit to the farm down. Sandslash does not get the move, and game 1 is going to go to Tomahawk UK, as this Foul Play is going to do too much damage to that Furret. Foul Play connects, Furret gets KO'd. That looked dire in the mid-game, but with a devastating catch, he's able to take the win. And in game 2, things are looking good here, leading the Alolan Ninetales into Furret. We're going to see a save switch into Azumarill, and that's going to be answered with Shadow Lapras. Now, Tomahawk didn't switch out right away. He decided to farm up some energy on the Alolan Ninetales, understanding that the Alolan Ninetales energy will go pretty far into the Furret as long as switch advantage is maintained. And by sending in the Lapras and shielding up the first move, he can now go for a Skull Bash, which gives a guaranteed defense boost, making this Shadow Lapras a lot tankier and able to absorb hits more easily. Play Rough is going to connect, and that just does not do a lot of damage, and this is the power of Shadow Lapras. There's a switch into Furret, and he is full sending the Skull Bash here. Skull Bash is going to inflict some very solid damage onto the Furret, and Lapras stays in this matchup. Lapras farms up, there's the switch into the Alolan Ninetales, and Alolan Ninetales is able to catch the Trailblaze. So again, catch after catch in this first matchup. The Sucker Punches are now boosted, but there's no more moves to be reached for the Furret. Adib does have the Alolan Sandslash, which will do a nice job of walling off the energy from the Alolan Ninetales. Alolan Ninetales is going to be firing off a double resisted Weather Ball. Now this Weather Ball does not accomplish much, but it does potentially allow him to burn the Switch Clock. Now he is going to fire off the Dazzling Gleam. This is only single resisted. Switch Clock still not available quite yet, but he is looking to pivot out. There's the switch to the Sableye, and Sableye will immediately be answered with a Drill Run from the Alolan Sandslash. Sandslash will be able to reach 2 moves, so we will see a no shield from the Shadow Sableye. Sableye is getting outpaced here. The Ice Punch reached by the Sandslash. Only 1 shield left to hide behind. Tomahawk elects to use that final shield here. Tomahawk is looking for a farm down, and he's gonna get it. Adib forced to switch out as he realizes his Sandslash does not have enough health remaining. Azumarill is going to be shielding up the Power Gem, but this is where the energy on the Sableye is so clutch. Sableye making a last-second Power Gem. This Power Gem is going to be getting Azumarill deep into the red health. There is still the Lapras and the Alolan Ninetales still available for Tomahawk. He sends in the Ninetales, and he clicks Weather Ball, winning the CMP tie. Weather Ball is resisted. It does not KO, but that's honestly preferred for Tomahawk because this means that he's going to get the 0-turn switch after this gets KO'd, and now he gets to send in the Lapras, whereas Adib will be behind by a turn. He has to try and get the drill run, but he cannot get there, and that's a clean 2-0 win. The next match I'll be showcasing is Winners Round 1. Tomahawk UK versus Nighttime Clasher. This is a rematch of the Liverpool Regional Championship Finals from the 2024 season, where Nighttime Clasher was able to emerge victorious. The leads, well, they're an identical mirror in game number 1, Shadow Drapion versus Shadow Drapion. And taking a look at the Pokemon in the back, these are actually identical lines of 3. I've always found true mirror matches to be one of the most enjoyable things to watch in competitive Pokemon Go PvP, because it's not about alignment. It all comes down to how you play the matches. Here, Tomahawk fires off the Aqua Tail. Nighttime Clasher makes an intentional decision to not throw this energy. The Aqua Tail is going to connect. There's the switch to Azumarill, trying to snipe down with a bubble, but Nighttime Clasher is able to save that Drapion with a crunch, and now he's going to send in his own Azumarill. So, Tomahawk has health on Drapion, but no energy. Nighttime Clasher has a Drapion on a couple HP remaining, but he has a crunch loaded. And Nighttime Clasher is going to be behind by 1 bubble in this Azumarill mirror. In this mirror, we are going to be seeing play roughs traded back and forth. The thing to watch for in this particular mirror is as follows. The third play rough will come very close to knocking out. A rank 1 Azumarill can survive the play rough on exactly 1 HP of damage and make 1 final move. So Nighttime Clasher is going to be met with another play rough. He is going to no shield, and Tomahawk will be able to outpace. So if Nighttime Clasher has the highest rank Azumarill, he can barely survive here. Play rough does not knock out, aggressive switch to Sableye, and now this is a problem for Tomahawk. This is a true mirror match, but Nighttime Clasher has had the answers at every turn. Nighttime Clasher in this endgame has the energy advantage on his Sableye, and he has a charge attack stored not only on the Shadow Drapion, but also on the Azumarill. So, despite the fact that they're both running identical lines of 3, we see that how you play the Pokemon is equally, if not far more important than the Pokemon that they're bringing. So, in this instance, Nighttime Clasher is completely set up to succeed. Tomahawk does run an attack-weighted Shadow Sableye, so he confidently plays to the CMP tie against Nighttime Clasher, forcing the final shield. But the big issue that Tomahawk is going to have is he has health available on his Drapion, but he does not have any energy. So when he decides to switch and send in this Drapion, Nighttime Clasher is still in a pretty decent position. We are going to see a switch by Tomahawk able to absorb the foul play, but there's still a move on the Drapion and still a move on the Azumarill, so there's just not a path forward in this game until he accidentally transfers the Poison Sting. He brought in the Azumarill, tried to click the move, the Poison Sting KO'd, but he wins the CMP in the Drapion mirror. Almost disaster for Nighttime Clasher, but he's still able to take game 1. Moving into game number 2, it's a very tough lead for Tomahawk, leading Shadow Sableye into Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion is going to strike first with the Crunch, and this does inflict massive damage onto the Sableye. Sableye no shields, it gets absolutely rocked, and now he's going to return fire with the Power Gem. Nighttime Clasher has to decide, does he value health on the Drapion? He says no, he's going to let that through. There's a safe switch to Azumarill, and Nighttime Clasher again banks a move and is now going to switch into the Azumarill mirror. Tomahawk in the back is bringing that Shadow Lapras, hoping Shadow Lapras will be able to bring home a victory and equalize this series, which is, of course, a best of 3. The Azumarill mirror, once again, is a bit of a slow one, but it's all about how this mirror can be leveraged by these players to have success with their other Pokemon. Because the Azumarill mirror is basically just an opportunity to pause for a second, gather your thoughts, and reposition for the later half of the game. Player ups are going to be traded back and forth, and there is Tomahawk making the first move, an aggressive switch and a catch onto the Sableye. Able to catch that charge attack that was aimed at the Azumarill onto the very low health Sableye, so he's still able to get value out of that lead. Now we are looking to see a switch out by Nighttime Clasher into the Shadow Sableye as Shadow Lapras hits the field. And this is a very tough matchup for the Ice type Shadow Lapras, because Shadow Lapras' fast move Psywave is a Psychic type move, and Sableye is a Ghost Dark type, so it is double resisting the Psywaves. Nighttime Clasher farming up past the super effective Power Gem, baits with a foul play, but we see a no shield, a nice call by Tomahawk. The tough thing for Tomahawk is even a foul play does a lot of damage from Shadow Sableye, so this Lapras is rapidly running out of the health that it will need to close out this game. We are going to see the Sparkling Aria reached and a no shield by the Shadow Sableye. Shadow on Shadow, this is going to hurt, getting Sableye deep into the red health. In comes Azumarill looking for a farm down, but the Shadow Sableye hangs on, making it to a Power Gem. Power Gem no shielded, that rocks the Azumarill, and now Nighttime Clasher gets to bring back in his own Azumarill. He does still have a shield remaining, opting to use it here as he would be deep into the red health, maybe not even able to survive. He gets that bubble down, in comes the Lapras, and unfortunately for Tomahawk, he is going to drop this series and move to the loser's side of the bracket. So he's already in top 16, but he's going to have a tough road ahead if he wants to get a medal in this tournament. His next opponent is Firestar, who's running a team with Credilli, Diggersby, Shadow Sableye, Corviknight, Azumarill, and Shadow Drapion. The leads are set for game 1, and it's a tough lead for Tomahawk, leading the Shadow Lapras into the Shadow Drapion. Shadow Lapras, I believe, can do pretty well in the one shield here, so we are going to see Tomahawk investing in early shield, trying to play to a favorable shield scenario. Shadow Lapras is going to return fire with the Sparkling Aria, and even though these Psywaves are single resisted, you're going to notice that Drapion's HP does drop quite a bit over time, and that is the Shadow Lapras difference right there. Shadow Lapras already used one shield in this match, not going to use a second. That's going to connect. There's a safe switch to Credilli, and that's going to be answered with the Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales. Both Pokemon hitting each other for super effective damage here. Credilli launching that Rock Tomb, that does big damage, and of course comes with a guaranteed attack drop. But the Alolan Ninetales will get back-to-back Weather Balls before Credilli gets its next move, as Alolan Ninetales is only one away. Weather Ball is going to land, farms up, waits a turn, and CMP ties the Credilli, and he's going for an undercharge. What an unbelievable play by Tomahawk. He traps Credilli into throwing the move. Even with hitting no bubbles, this will KO, and now Tomahawk can get an energy advantage on Shadow Drapion. Drapion now going to be answered with Firestar's Drapion, but Firestar is behind on energy here. He is going to be launching an Aqua Tail. That's very okay for Tomahawk. Tomahawk returning fire with an Aqua Tail of his own. This will not be enough to knock out Firestar's Drapion, but it will get Firestar's Drapion into a perilous health range. There's the switch to Lapras. Lapras is going to be hit with a last-second Aqua Tail. The Drapion barely hanging on. Aqua Tail is going to be shielded as Tomahawk views this energy on the Lapras as far too valuable. Firestar waiting his switch timer here. The Lapras has two moves, but he may be able to get a catch onto that Credilli. Switch Clock wasn't quite available there, but it will be now. Tough call to make. Will Tomahawk pause? Will he just throw it instantly? He throws it instantly, but Firestar thinks he'll throw a couple more Psywaves first. This Sparkling Aria is going to land, and that is significant damage. Sableye is going to get that farm down. In comes Tomahawk. Does he watch for the catch? He pauses, and that's the patience that he needed. But Firestar has the foul play. He wins the CMP tie. The game comes down to this. Resisted foul play onto the Drapion. Does not KO. Tomahawk survives. a tough lead, but he's able to fight his way back with incredible energy management and then unbelievable play to wait a turn, CMP tie, and undercharge. Game number 2, we're staring at a Drapion mirror once again. The Lapras has been benched, but the Alolan Ninetales is being brought for a second game in a row. Aqua Tail is going to connect as Firestar is going to no shield and return fire with an Aqua Tail of his own. High rank Shadow Drapion can survive the 8 Poison Stings and 2 Aqua Tails. If you have a very bad rank Drapion, then you can potentially not survive here. Firestar is going to no shield. That Aqua Tail is going to get him very low. He's going to fire off this Aqua Tail at the last possible second. And Tomahawk is going to decide to let this go. Because in this meta, switch advantage not nearly as important as trying to make a play for an energy advantage. Because now he can take the 1 Shadow Claw of energy on Shadow Sableye. And this means if there's the Sableye in the back, Firestar can't afford to bring it in. Because if you switch into a mirror match, if he brings in the Sableye behind a Shadow Claw, he's always going to lose that matchup. So instead, he's forced to send in his third Pokemon, which is Corviknight. And this means that Tomahawk will end up getting the alignment that he wants, where the Sableye is going to be stuck against the Fairy-type Alolan Ninetales. Ironhead is going to connect. He's going to send in the Sableye, but it's immediately answered with the Foul Play. Foul Play is going to grab the first shield of the match, but now it's time. Alolan Ninetales hits the field, and there's just not really much that Firestar can do here. Firestar is going to successfully bait with the Foul Play and grab shields from the Alolan Ninetales, but the Alolan Ninetales just seems like a runaway train at this point. Ninetales going for the Weather Ball. Even a Weather Ball that would only hit neutrally would do quite a lot of damage. We are going to see the shield. Ninetales more than happy to double shield in this matchup, even though it is shielding 2 baits, just to ensure that Sableye gets removed from the field of play. In comes Corviknight. Corviknight unable to get the move. Nice overfarm by Tomahawk. He is going to fire off this Weather Ball. Down goes the Corviknight. Back in comes the Sableye. Sableye now going to get KO'd with a super effective Dazzling Gleam. And Tomahawk, in dominant fashion, gets the 2-0 victory and is going to advance to losers round 3. The next match is against Dialab, who's running a very interesting team with Shadow Blastoise, Clodsire, Unova Stunfisk, Shadow Jumpluff, Shadow Sableye, and Alolan Sandslash. The leads are set for game number 1, and based on typings, you would think that Tomahawk is in a good position here. A poison type in the Drapion against the grass type Jumpluff. But this season, Jumpluff has ditched Energy Ball for Acrobatics because Acrobatics gives it insanely flexible play in its bad matchups. Acrobatics will inflict massive damage if it lands. We're going to see Tomahawk. He's going to choose to let it go because Blastoise is a huge problem for his team. He's now going to respond to the Blastoise save switch with a Sableye, but he's already too far behind on energy. It's 4 rollouts to the first Hydro Cannon for Blastoise and 3 to the rest going forward. And this means already, with the amount of energy that Tomahawk has, Blastoise is guaranteed to win the 2-shield. So Tomahawk is basically going to have to catch out of this matchup if he wants to preserve Shadow Sableye. And Shadow Sableye is going to be very strong into Dialab's team, so keeping it healthy is going to be at a premium. Shadow Sableye farming up, but unfortunately only 9 Shadow Claws, not enough for the back-to-back foul plays. Dialab is going to commit the shield. We're going to see a switch into a Azumarill, but great patience by Dialab. Dialab now going to be firing off this Skull Bash, but if you're Tomahawk, I think you're actually okay with the Skull Bash being thrown here, because at minimum, that energy is not aimed elsewhere, and it's a lot more devastating when it's aimed elsewhere. We're going to see the Ice Beam fired off by the Azumarill, but when the third is revealed as Alolan Sandslash, this endgame does feel pretty hopeless. As Alolan Sandslash, this one is running Shadow Claw. Shadow Claw hitting for neutral damage on this Azumarill, and that's going to make life very, very difficult. He gets the fire off the Drill Run. Drill Run will not be enough to knock out here. Azumarill barely hangs on and returns fire with the Play Rough. This resisted damage will add up on the Sandslash, but it's still not nearly enough to threaten it. Sandslash gets the farm down, leaves with the move. Tomahawk's gonna need to make a catch if he wants a way back in this game. He's waiting down the timer here. The timer hits 1, the switch, and the peekaboo catch. Oh my goodness, what a play. Tomahawk UK gets the catch onto the Drapion. Back in comes the Sableye. Sableye farming up. He waits. In comes the catch attempt from the opponent, but it's not to be. Tomahawk gets the double up on foul plays, and in a game that looked completely lost again, it keeps happening. He flips the script, and he's going to take a 1-0 advantage in this best of 3 series. He may have won game 1, but surviving this Blastoise is going to be a very tall task. In game number 2, he does pick up a pretty nice lead, leading the Claydol into Alolan Sandslash. Sandslash stays in this matchup and is going to fire off an Ice Punch. Ice Punch is going to be shielded up. He's going to throw 1 and the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb will not be enough to knock out, but it will inflict some pretty solid damage onto the Sandslash. Sandslash barely survives. There's the save switch into Jump Bluff, but Tomahawk came ready. He brought the Alolan Ninetales. This is double super effective damage onto the Shadow Jump Bluff. The opponent's thinking about it, going to no shield. Can it survive? And yes, barely hanging on is this Shadow Jump Bluff, and Jump Bluff is going to inflict some very solid damage in return as Acrobatics is going to connect. Tomahawk wins switch advantage, but the moment Blastoise hits the field, he knows he has been lured into a trap, because this is now an opportunity for Blastoise to get a big energy head start, and with this energy, Blastoise is going to completely run away with this game. Tomahawk can't afford to send in the Claydol. Claydol would get knocked out by the Hydro. He needs to send in the Drapion. Drapion can survive the Hydro Cannon, but Dialop knows that. He's going for the jugular here, firing off the Skull Bash. Does he respect it? No, he calls it. Skull Bash connects. Massive damage. We're going to see the last second crunch reached by the Drapion, but Dialop has now buffed up his defense with the Blastoise. He shields the crunch, and now Blastoise is a runaway train in this endgame. In comes Claydol. Claydol is going to be forced to shield here. Claydol will make it to a Rock Tomb, and Rock Tomb does of course come with the guaranteed attack drop. So the question will be, does this attack drop save Tomahawk in game number 2? Dialop seems to think that it will not. He fires off the Hydro Cannon. He could have switched to reset the attack drop, but he's saying no. Shadow Blastoise, it doesn't care if it's -1. It just does too much damage, and we're going to a game number 3. Game number 3, we see the same leads as game number 1, leading the Shadow Drapion into the Shadow Jump Bluff. In game 1, Tomahawk no shielded the Acrobatics, Blastoise hit the field, and things got very, very difficult. So will history repeat itself? No, we're going to see an early shield from Tomahawk, but the moment an advantage has been obtained, it's Shadow Blastoise time. Shadow Blastoise hits the field, now going to be met with a Crunch. This will inflict solid damage onto the Blastoise. We will see the no shield. Crunch is going to connect, and Crunch gets the defense drop. Dialop over farming to the max, but we see a brilliant CMP tie by Tomahawk UK. He realizes with the defense drop, Aqua Tail must be respected, and he's able to grab that shield back. That is incredibly important for Tomahawk. Hydro Cannon is going to pick up the KO, but now Tomahawk is going to send out Sableye. Sableye farming up. The Hydro Cannon is reached, but there's a catch. He's making catches left and right, game after game, catching the Hydro Cannon onto the Shadow Lapras. Lapras is going to be answered with the Alolan Sandslash. Sandslash, Shadow Claw, helping it immensely in this matchup, as now he can potentially try for a drill run and a farm down. Shadow Lapras desperately needs to make it to the back-to-back Sparkling Arias. It's very, very close here. This Aria is going to be no shielded. Dialop knows he can survive, but Sparkling Aria number 2 is reached, and this puts Dialop in a very difficult spot. He is going to shield. The Lapras survived on 1 HP. It switches back into the Sableye, and Sableye no shields, safe in the knowledge that a drill run does less than an Acrobatics. There's the switch into the Jump Bluff, and unfortunately for Dialop, his tournament run has come to an end. Tomahawk nods as Foul Play picks up the KO. In comes Blastoise. That gets farmed down as well. The Shadow Blastoise, an incredibly cool pick, but the Double Ice team survives to losers round 4. The next opponent is Ilsemi, who's running a team with Shadow Drapion, Furret, Shadow Sableye, Alolan Sandslash, Azumarill, and Claydol. So definitely some targets here for the Ice types, but the Alolan Ninetales has to be wary of the potential Azumarill or Alolan Sandslash, and unfortunately it is stuck against the Azumarill in game number 1. Ninetales is going to strike first with the Dazzling Gleam, and we will see an immediate no shield here from this Azumarill. Dazzling Gleam is going to connect. Ninetales farming up quite a bit of energy, and we're going to see a Play Rough fired off by the Azumarill, and Play Rough is survivable by the Ninetales, so Tomahawk is more than happy to commit a no shield. Tomahawk farming up quite a bit of energy here, and he's going to go for the Dazzling Gleam. Dazzling Gleam no shielded by Semi, as Semi knows this is not knocking out either. Farming up even more. There's a catch, and what a devastating catch. This is a double resisted Ice Beam catch onto the Shadow Lapras, and that looked like it healed it. Oh my goodness. Out comes Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion not necessarily what Tomahawk is hoping to bait out here. He would rather bait out the Furret, as Furret would be a pretty big problem for the Claydol in the back, as long as Furret is not at a big disadvantage. Shadow Lapras shielded up the first move. We are going to see the Sparkling Aria get the shield from the Drapion, as there was a bluff of a potential Skull Bash. Now, I think Lapras should be pretty fine letting this Crunch go. Crunch does a lot of damage, but it does not knock out. The defense drop does come through, and that means that this Lapras is going to get farmed down pretty quickly unless we see a switch out, which we do, and Claydol hits the field. Claydol now gets an energy advantage, and this is so incredibly important. Furret has a dominating matchup against Claydol in even energy, but this is not even energy. The Furret's behind by 3 Mud Slaps, the Rock Tomb is reached, and applying a debuff before Furret can buff itself up with Trailblaze means that Furret is now in desperate trouble. Furret, it does not get same type attack bonus on Sucker Punch or Trailblaze, which means these moves are suddenly non-threatening at -1 attack. Trailblaze connects, Claydol tanks it like a champion, and makes it to another Rock Tomb. This Rock Tomb is going to be game over for the Furret. Furret is going to get KO'd. Tomahawk looking to switch into the Alolan Ninetales. Ninetales makes it to the Weather Ball. This is going to be KOing Azumarill, and despite the fact that Ninetales saw one of the matchups it did not want to see, it did not matter. This double ice strategy paying absolute dividends, and now he can send in the Claydol. The opponent will not be able to farm down, and they will be forced to throw this Aqua Tail. And by the Mud Slap, the first one landing, now this is a range where Shadow Lapras will be able to get the Psywave farm down and secure a Game 1 victory. And this interesting double ice team continues its winning ways. Amazing lead in game number 2 for Tomahawk as he leads Shadow Lapras into Azumarill. The Alolan Ninetales this time successfully avoiding that Azumarill. Tomahawk has to feel like he's in a pretty good position, but Semi has a nasty surprise in the back. He's brought the Alolan Sandslash, and Alolan Sandslash is an absolute nightmare for Alolan Ninetales to deal with. A shield came up from the Lapras on the first Play Rough, and now buffs up its defense with a Skull Bash. The moment energy has been thrown, there is the switch into the Drapion. Drapion will immediately be answered with the Sparkling Aria. Lapras being at +1 may incentivize it to try and stay in this matchup for a while, because it's going to take these crunches better than it would at other times in the match when its defense is not boosted. So that crunch lands, honestly does not do a ton of damage. Sparkling Aria number 2 is reached, and Semi now has a choice to make. The no shield on the Drapion. Sparkling Aria is going to connect. There's the switch into his own Drapion, trying for a potential crunch catch, but great patience by Semi, holding on to this energy, and now getting to connect with not 1, but 2 back-to-back Aqua Tails. But Tomahawk does not know it yet, but by sending Drapion into the opponent's Drapion, he has now put his Alolan Ninetales in a position where it cannot win. The main threat from game 1, Azumarill, has been eliminated, but the Alolan Sandslash in the back is even worse for the Ninetales. So if it's anything else on the team, the Claydol, the Furret, or the Shadow Sableye, this is a very straightforward endgame for Tomahawk. He's up to Powder Snows, but it's the Sandslash, and Sandslash is going to mean that we're going to a game number 3, as Sandslash double resist Powder Snow, single resist Dazzling Gleam. So there's just not a lot of ground that can be gained here, unfortunately, by this Alolan Ninetales. Ninetales going to be hit with a Drill Run. We will see the no shield. If this was a Powder Snow Alolan Sandslash, at the very least, a farm down wouldn't be possible, but it is the Shadow Claw variant, which means, unfortunately, this Ninetales is getting farmed all the way down, and the Lapras, which does not have basically any residual energy, is just going to get knocked out with the double Drill Run. So at this point, this is a very safe shield from Semi, and Tomahawk will know this game's over, and you can see there, he is offering a GG's as he realizes there's just no path forward in this game with double Drill Runs loaded on the Sandslash. So the Alolan Ninetales, so good in game number 1, unfortunately a liability in game number 2. So the Ninetales does not make an appearance in game number 3. Instead, Shadow Drapion into Azumarill. Drapion farming up a massive amount of energy and now going to fire off the Crunch. Crunch will inflict some pretty solid damage. The most logical time for Semi to throw on good timing is 1 in the move. So we're going to see a beautiful catch and sneak, and saving that Drapion energy is guaranteed to pay dividends, as the energy is always going to be more efficient when it's aimed at something that isn't the Azumarill. Semi with an interesting play here, he chooses to send out the Drapion into the Azumarill. Drapion doesn't have the greatest matchup overall, but with a little bit of chip damage, it makes it substantially easier. Semi could have sent out the Sandslash, but he's potentially making the read that Sandslash will be needed in this endgame. Play Rough is going to be shielded, and this is just an opportunity for a massive overfarm by the Drapion. Drapion looking for a shield and a farm down. Tomahawk cannot afford to let that happen. He saved energy on Drapion for a moment just like this. He switches in his Drapion, goes for the Aqua Tail. While this will not knock out, this is incredibly important damage. So much energy loaded for Semi. He is going to be firing off this Aqua Tail, and you see the nod from Tomahawk. He realizes he's in a very good position. Shadow Lapras up 2 shields, just does not have a lose con against any of the potential Pokemon that Semi could have in the back. The Drapion very low on health. In comes the Lapras. The Crunch is not reached, and that is game over as Sandslash hits the field. Both trainers realizing that this game, it's just concluded. The Shadow Lapras, there's just no beating it from this point forward. Sparkling Aria connects. That's some pretty big damage into the Alolan Sandslash. Sandslash is going to be firing off this Drill Run, and we will see the shield from the Lapras. It can be tempting when you're in such a dominant position to say, you know what, I can survive this, but Tomahawk making the correct play, saying, I can't take my shields with me, so I may as well use the shields here. There's going to be the switch into Azumarill, and that's instantly met with the Skull Bash. Skull Bash will get to ramp up Lapras' defense even more. That Skull Bash is huge damage. Azumarill does not get the Play Rough either, and Sandslash is getting fully Psy-waved down, and Tomahawk advances in the tournament. In his next set, Tomahawk would end up falling to the eventual regional champion, Elam. So he finishes in 4th place out of 220 trainers. And in competitive Pokemon Go, the top 4 spots get medals, which means that this double ice strategy, Alolan Ninetales, a Pokemon everyone was completely overlooking and not giving the time of day whatsoever, earned a medal in the Atlanta Regional Championships. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And I'll see you guys in the next video.